Let us today discuss art versus content. Now, we discussed about the historical background of OTT along with its impact emergence, whether it is going to last long or what is the future of OTT. So, it depends on several factors such as the subscription based model which is going to work, whether it's advertisement or also technology, the coming of 5G, how it is relatively going to change OTT, the streaming platforms. Now, with that, we also kind of try to discuss art versus content. Now, which is better, art or content? In in the category in which we are discussing, which is OTT, content is the king. Now, art in a way is we see or feel is getting integrated in content because ultimately it is the content which matters and not the art. If we are discussing OTT, the integration of art into content will ultimately bring in some sort of revenue, and at the end of the day these OTT platforms are nothing but businesses, and for their businesses to boom and grow they need content. Now, if they had to bring in only art, they would make parallel cinemas or art house films, but this is very different from what the cinema or the parallel cinema had been doing for years. So, this streaming culture brings us to question how these streaming monopolies offer endless choices to its viewers. The kind of genres that we have in what we call as OTT is immense and giving the illusion of control and even freedom to those who consume their wares. So, in a way, they kind of hypnotize the audience into believing that the content that they are giving is what the audiences have demanded. So, the algorithm, that how it works on the kind of content you click, it is not discussing that. Instead, it is trying to make the audiences believe or give that illusion that the control is in your hand, but this is just an illusion. There is no freedom of choice, it all depends on algorithm. But by the very true nature of the business model, we see it's a kind of control that's only ephemeral. It's just for the namesake. Actually, there is no control over these OTT platforms for the audience. And there is Nick, who calls these platform capitalism. This is called platform capitalism, and where it is on the basis of algorithm and feeds, they give you suggestions as to which program to watch or which is the next program that you can watch. It is all based on algorithm, and the control goes out of your hand. It is not entirely your choice to watch a particular program, rather it is given like a suggestion, right? And that is how it works. And these advanced capitalism is coming to be the center upon extracting and using particular kind of raw material data. So, on the kind of search that you did on platforms like Google, Microsoft, or other such platforms, on the basis of that, that is called the raw data, these uh, OTT platforms give you suggestions or shows you that these are your interests, which rather might not be true. You just Google to get some sort of information, but that becomes like a given choice to you. Now, this platform capitalism, as Nick calls it, are these companies such as I already mentioned, like Google, Facebook, Apple, Microsoft, Uber, Airbnb, Amazon, and others to operate as platforms. In this business model, both hardware and software are used as foundation. So, in this business model of what they call as platform capitalism, everything is taken into consideration from hardware to software. These platforms, which is platform capitalism, has been both heralded as beneficial as and also detrimental by various authors. So they say for a company to gain more profit, it seems to be beneficial, but it is detrimental for the audience in a way that they don't realize that it is not their choice, but they are in a way hegemonized to think that the control is with them by various authors. These the trend identified in platform capitalism have similarities with those described under the heading of surveillance capitalism. So when we talk about surveillance, it again brings us back to theory where there was panopticon, and Foucault has largely discussed. So there was this panopticon where it used to monitor the people, right? So this monitoring in the older days is what is now called surveillance capitalism. Your these cameras, today's technology that we see, is it in a way surveillance? Through that it generates data. Let's say for example, how Google gets the data to tell you, or other apps which tell you that you should take another route, or Google Maps for instance, that this route is has some sort of congestion. How do they determine that? It is all through these hardware softwares and using you as a data. So for example, in a street they show that there is congestion. How do they determine that? They have not put a camera on top, right? So it is the mobile networks, when in one place they see a lot of uh, mobile networks or mobiles. For instance, people usually they have their data on and location on. So this lets them determine how this route is congested, right? So therefore do not take this route, take another route. This is what is called surveillance capitalism, and through which they are making money. As streaming platforms went from being host of pre-existing work or to active producers themselves, they began to use data itself to make content. Again, very interesting. So they are using our own data to determine what kind of content people in general like. So we will be discussing the impact of these shows, or how a certain show in a certain category is amongst the best, right? So how do we determine that, or how they are determining it? Initially we believe that it is us who are choosing, but ultimately it is our own uh, data that they are using to make such kind of content. If 1,000 people are watching a thriller, they determine that most people like thriller, they start making thrillers. So this is how platform capitalism, surveillance capitalism is working. Online content streaming is increasingly dependent on collecting a vast treasure trove of data about you. So these what they call as streaming platforms are data generating machines, other than what they are streaming for you. And a data protection and privacy consultant, Pat Walsh, observes that it is not only changing what users see on their personalized screen, it is changing the way media is produced. So it is happening on two levels, and see how strongly what we had earlier discussed in terms of popular culture, to what extent we see popular culture or mass culture working, right? It is the mass culture who is acting as a data in ways to tell them that we think that our screen is personalized in nature, but it's changing the way media is produced. The programs that come to you, it is through your personalized screen. The ubiquity of streaming means maximizing consumption, and which means that art is lumped together as content. So art is being integrated with content. There's nothing as such left to call something art in this category. Under the guise of giving consumers more agency and their choice, streaming platforms tells us we are inclined towards and show for them. So they in a way tells us that you are inclined towards so and so show. We are not telling you or asking you to watch such and such show, but it is the other way around. It closes off any room for discovery, wonder, or experiment that makes engagement with art challenging or moving in unexpected ways. So, there is something called that it's calling this closes of our brain to an extent to comprehend and think that what is new, let's discover something new. Oh, I'm bored with this kind of genre, let me switch on to another genre and watch. It doesn't give you that time to think. That is what these OTT giants or streaming platforms are doing with us in the name of giving content. Netflix, like many disruptive media, and that is why it is called disruptive media phenomena, before it, including radio and others were also there, uh, exists between and inevitably problematizes it. So, this being a disruptive media is existing in between the boundary, and it is also problematizing certain things. And we see theorist Raman Lobato in his book Netflix Nations, it says it not only creates the things one watch but also decides what one can watch. So it is very interesting, and at the same time it is very horrifying to note the underlying behavior of these OTT giants. Now another such example which was released like a documentary in Netflix called Social Dilemma, and it features people who have worked for Facebook and other such tech giants. What is the nature of these social media? How they are keeping you glued? What techniques they are using? They, in a way, after doing research and all, they know that after a point that using internet 24/7 or being glued has a side effect to your psychology, but that research itself is not being brought out. It is all about data. The more data you acquire, the more accurate you will be able to produce through these medias. Now they also, in terms of what we are discussing, art versus content, had it been art, it would have been very conscious of what it is producing. But since it is mixed with content and it is just a business like any other business which is not conscious enough to think about its viewers, what these OTT giants or streaming platforms are doing. So it has to do with facts that streaming platforms have definitely changed ownership. Now, instead of ownership, we talk about access. We no longer have the ownership, we have the access to certain shows because we have subscribed to such and such OTT platform. And there is this hypothesis that people value access over ownership. Now, the question or how to prove the hypothesis whether people like more of access than ownership is yet to be concluded. And Anuja Pradhan has been doing this study on consumer culture where she observes, and this hypothesis may come true, may not come true, will be revealed after the study is conducted. Netflix for one has begun to try salvage its subscriber problem with a flood of mediocre content. So since it is undergoing this problem of subscriber problem, they say that it is providing people with mediocre content. It's not something very stupendous or fabulous. while companies like Disney are producing fewer movies for cinema as they focus exclusively on blockbusters. So Disney is producing less number of films, rather they are focusing on more of blockbusters, and in that they are all developing flood for content for their streaming platforms to keep the attention. So the end goal is attention. Through attention, they will be able to keep you glued. There is no other way. They need your attention. Attention is equivalent to money, which is again time. So time is equivalent to money. The second one is passive consumption. So there is this passive consumption which is happening, which you might not like, but because you don't have anything to do, you have leisure time, you indulge in something called passive consumption. More than ever, people have begun to engage with the media on offer passively, with entire season of TV shows drifting by in the background. So you start a show and then you have another episode to finish, then you have another season to finish. So back to back, it is all drifting in the background. They also say that the proliferation of media that has little artistic merit of its own but makes for an attractive visual experience. So this media, in reality, there is no artistic merit to it, but in a way it is able to come up with something very visually attractive experience. So that is what is important. For example, a show called Emily in Paris, it's a very hollow kind of show. There is no content, not even forget about like what we call as art, but there is no content at all. But this show surprisingly did really well. Why? Widely panned for its thinly written plot, as it already mentions, and dialogues, but which served as eye candy akin to short form social media content. So this is surprising, as to we are debating about art versus content. Now the debate needs another debate, that where is content? Is there something really called content? You called cringe to be content. So these are the questions that erupt from as we discuss art versus content. Again, we see Anuja Pradhan making another commentary, and she says, it is very much in the favor of companies to keep you in this form of middle boredom, because in a way it helps them. How? So you don't necessarily reflect on the ideas you have brought into the ideals of living in consumption, consumer society, and consumption being the key to happiness. So in a way, if they are still giving you some boredom kind of content, it is helping these OTT platforms. She explains that through streaming and other ways, you do not necessarily reflect on what is important or what is in a way bought to you, that is ideals of living, okay, in a consumer society. Are you questioning? No, you are not questioning. You think that this is the ideal thing. Consumption being the key to happiness, and consumption is the key to happiness. There is no other way to gain happiness. And these punishing verb obligation, hustle culture, and lower securities also in a way is increasingly moving forward. So the culture of overworking, work obligation, hustle culture is also shown, and it is in a way getting promoted. Are simply too exhausted to think. So you're too exhausted to think what do you want or what is content. Content then offers escape irrespectively of its quality. Now the kind of environment that you are looking or living in, at the end of the day when you get home, you need some sort of escapism, and that escapism you get from these shows, which might be very mediocre, but you don't mind to come out of that zone of hustle culture or work obligations, etc. Now the same thing happened with TV, which is prime time. Now in urban areas or semi-urban areas, men or people going to work, they come back in the evening and they are so tired that they do not want to watch news channels which are in a way a bit heavy, right? So in urban areas you see most people getting back home late because of the traveling and distance, etc. So they prefer watching some TV series. So earlier, before the intervention of OTT, it was these series, and these series help them relieve, right? Or it was in a way called as escape. So we see that kind of similarities drawing between these series and these OTT. The pandemic also in a way helped when people were streaming. It became the dominant form. But there are relatively few streaming platforms in the market, and in their bid to compete with one another over revenue and views, art itself suffers. So, as the debate has now moved ahead of art versus content to an extent, art has to suffer. Now, if you are in a race to produce content back to back, how do you think that you will have the time to think whether there is something called art which is getting integrated into the content or not? That is the question. Merger and licensing expresses turn in art into commodities. Even if there is a small hope for art to be in content, the mergering and licensing, because it is all about making money, they are compromising on the art, and it somehow turns into commodity, a very cheap commodity. This means that even older, well-loved, established media are subject to disappearing. So, in a way, it could lead to anyone's disappearance. At one time, the TV channels were doing just so great, so great. But with the coming of streaming online platforms, we see that they are, in a way, getting less attention as compared to other than the family people or mothers, especially women who do not work. They are catering to the TV series, and these OTT platforms are at the mercy of streaming authority, making business decisions over artistic ones. So since they are under the radar of these streaming authorities and they still need business to flourish, they are making these decisions over the artistic ones. Now, talking about Disney Hotstar, it has also hiked its price. It's all about pricing. Whether they survive it or not is different question. Netflix has also jacked up its prices, and what I was talking about, these platforms are coming together, combining, and they are giving you a one package, right? So Discovery, then we have other channels. Discovery is scrapping films and series left and right and reversing its controversial everything under one streaming roof category or strategy. So do we think now, or can we conclude that these streaming wars are over? Can we say that? We don't know. We have to wait and see. How there is a crisis within streaming platforms and is promoting sweeping unilateral business decisions. So if we see a business coming up with unilateral measures, they are bound to be subdued. They are not going to make it or be there in the market for long. These streaming platforms, with their singular focus profit, viewership, subscription counts, have pushed consumer culture. So whatever this consumer culture is, where there is economy and also how things are consumed, they are in a way pushing it away. further we see that this business algorithmic angle that works, that we discussed earlier also, we see that uh, the digital anthropologist says that if we look at things from this algorithmic angle, it might seem as though they control what should be consumed by whom, which is actually happening, and there is a lot of monopoly in these platforms as well. uh, they might think of coming back to the TV series model of dropping one episode each week, because now they are also thinking about this, what was earlier called binge watching, how there is a lot of fatigue, it's also called audience fatigue, which they are thinking about, and therefore that could be a point where they drop this, what they call as bringing in seasons of Korean drama that came recently called The Demon, and there are others as well. And this became instantly very famous. It was dropping its episodes on Saturday and Sunday, so 2 episodes per week. And with that, people were glued to wait and watch these series, watch this particular series. There was so much of anticipation around what will happen next with that episode, and you wait for that period of time for the release of the episodes. So in a way, they are trying to bring back that slow consumption, because that is of some value. And but changing the viewership model still points to the inordinate influence and streaming platforms. These people organize their time and leisure. How are they organizing their time and leisure? And at the end of the day, with platforms retaining control over, they create and broadcast. And it does not give any agency back to consumers. But with that as well, if they are thinking of dropping the episodes every 1 week, still that autonomy is going to be with these OTT platforms, these streaming platforms. It is not going to come back to the audience. But having said that, we can see art returning to content. Otherwise, it will be like passive consumption, and people will again not think of what kind of content they are consuming passively. So, in a way, to bring back art, integrate it into content, we can say that it will be better and in a way easy for them to contribute to bring back what they call as this slow consumption, and with several going back to weekly episodes dropping model, just like the TV.